Out of order. I show you out of order. You don't know what out of order is, Mr. Trask. I'd show you, but I'm too old. I'm too tired. I'm too fucking blind. If I were the man I was 5 years ago, I'd take a flamethrower to this place.
No more fighting between us is my #1 priority. Just tell me if he's going to survive or die. Are you going to quit, Vincent? Al Pacino's cardiac arrest occurred in the year 2020. Something had altered irrevocably, yet paramedics had brought him back. It was no one's guess that the guy behind The Godfather would live to be 84 years old. He became a father at the age of 83 with a partner who was younger than his granddaughter, and he became broke after squandering $50 million and enduring films he despises in order to stay alive. What makes Hollywood's greatest actor the most lonely right now? A combination of factors, including his controversial views on death and DNA testing. New York City's East Harlem was the site of Al Pacino's birth on April 25, 1940. Rosa Girardi and Salvatore Pacino, his parents, were immigrants from Sicily who came to the United States to start a new life. They were married for a short time. The young Pacino's father took a job as an insurance salesman in California when he was only 2 years old. As a result, Pacino was raised by his grandmother Kate and grandfather James Girardi in the South Bronx by his mother. They were originally from the little Sicilian town of Corleone, which would rise to fame thanks to The Godfather. In the 1940s and 1950s, living in the Bronx was no picnic. Because of his father's absence, his family was never truly able to overcome their financial struggles. His mother, however, left him with a gift that would influence his life's trajectory. She took him to the movies frequently because she thought they were great, and he would become engrossed in the plot. He was captivated by acting long before he grasped its true essence. Going to the cinema as a kid was the beginning of a love that would last a lifetime. Among his buddies, Pacino became known as Sonny as he grew older. He was constantly testing limits and had a wild side. He began drinking and smoking when he was 9 years old. At the age of 13, he began to dabble in marijuana. He was always in trouble and didn't care much about school. As time went on, fights, missing class, and rule breaking became the norm. Several expulsions later, he managed to get admission to the high school for the performing arts. It appeared to be the perfect spot for someone with his background, but he didn't linger for much longer. He left school at the age of 17 following an argument with his mother on his future plans. He wasted his adolescence aimlessly, unemployed and without a high school certificate. Like him, his running companions lacked any sense of purpose. While some were involved in criminal activities, others experimented with narcotics. Later in life, Petey, Cliffy, and Bruce, 3 of his closest friends, would all succumb to heroin overdoses. Something stopped Pacino from giving up when he might have easily gone down the same path. He found solace in acting, a means to channel his restless energies into a greater purpose. He went on to say that acting was the only thing that kept him alive. The losses that followed had a permanent impact on him. His mother passed away at the age of 43 in 1962, when Pacino was just 22 years old. She had battled depression for a long time, and her passing was the most devastating thing that had ever happened to him. James, his grandpa, and someone he had a close relationship with, died away a year later. The 2 individuals who meant the most to him both left his life in the space of a year. Of retrospect, he says that was the lowest period of his life. There seemed to be nothing for him to cling to. He was disoriented. He detailed his suffering in a memoir he penned years later, titled Sonny Boy, after the moniker his mother had bestowed upon him. Maybe that's where I'll find my mom if I'm fortunate enough. Just giving me the opportunity to approach her and say hi, Ma, would be enough. Look at what befell me. Pacino immersed himself in acting following the deaths of his grandfather and mother. Difficulty was high. In order to fund his acting studies, he worked as a janitor, busboy, messenger, and postal clerk, among other jobs. He met Charlie Lawton, an acting instructor at Greenwich Village's HB studio, who would later become a close mentor to him. Money, though, was never an issue. Nights would pass with nowhere to go. When he ran out of somewhere to stay, he would sleep on friends' couches or even in theaters. He slept on the streets and played whatever few parts he could get in underground theater performances in the early 1960s because he was so poor. The 1968 off-Broadway production of Israel Horowitz's The Indian Wants the Bronx, in which Al Pacino featured, was a watershed moment in his career. It opened on January 17 and played for 177 performances in New York City's Astor Place Theater. His Murph was a dangerously human figure with an untamed spirit. Playing a violent troublemaker wasn't all he was doing. The man was revealing the complexity under the aggressive exterior. Both the critics and the business took note. As finest actor, he was honored with the Obie Award. Horowitz took home an award for Best New Play, while his co-star John Cazale took home an award for Best Supporting Actor. Behind the scenes, something much more significant occurred. Along with another play by Horowitz, The Indian Wants the Bronx was produced. Jill Clayburgh, who was in a relationship with Al Pacino at the time, stars in it, and it's called The Sugar Plum. Martin Bregman, a man whose life Pacino would come to deeply value, was a co-star in this play. He became Bregman's manager when the latter sensed potential in him. He would subsequently assist Pacino in securing some of his most renowned parts in films including Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, The Godfather, and others. In retrospect, Pacino acknowledged that his professional trajectory may have been different had it not been for Bregman. Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie was Pacino's Broadway debut, which he made a mere year after that. In 1969, the Belasco Theater hosted the world premiere of the play written by Don Peterson. It dealt with issues of addiction and salvation via the experiences of adolescent drug users residing in a recovery facility. An emotionally wounded teenage addict with a rough facade, Pacino portrayed Bickham. The play had an impression despite its short run of 39 performances. Following 9 previews, Jack Crowell of Newsweek characterized him as a hood with lyrical spirit. As far as fresh Broadway actors go, he was rated Variety's most promising. He was named Best Featured Actor in a play at the tender age of 29 when he received the Tony Award. Everything changed at that moment. Years of preparation allowed Pacino to give his characters such complexity. He was a graduate of the world-renowned Actors Studio in New York City, where he trained with Lee Strasberg. Strasberg was a pioneer in the field of method acting, which he developed to help performers bring their characters to life on stage. Training with Strasberg, Pacino remarked afterwards, gave him the self-assurance to make acting his career. Playing Michael Corleone in The Godfather was more than simply a challenging role for Al Pacino, it was an uphill struggle. He has become famous for his performance today. However, his casting almost scuttled the whole project in 1972. A bankable star was desired by Paramount Pictures. Someone along the lines of Warren Beatty, Ryan O'Neal, Robert Redford, or Jack Nicholson. Pacino was almost unknown back then. Despite his impressive theatrical history and 1 film credit, the studio was unconvinced. In their eyes, he was not a leading guy. They were hoping for a towering figure, the stereotypical Hollywood celebrity. In Francis Ford Coppola's view, it was different. He thought Pacino would be great as Michael Corleone after seeing him on Broadway. No one else had noticed what he saw in Pacino, the skill to portray Michael's metamorphosis from a harmless military hero into a vicious mob lord. The studio and Coppola were embroiled in an unending spat because Coppola would not budge. Paramount once issued an ultimatum to Coppola after testing James Caan for the part of Michael. If Caan portrayed Sonny Corleone, Pacino might remain. The studio remained unconvinced even after production had begun. They wanted Pacino out after seeing early film of his performance. The pressure was on for Coppola to quickly demonstrate Pacino's value. The assassination sequence at the restaurant was filmed sooner than originally intended, by his decision. That was a turning point. The initial serious foray into the mafia realm by Michael, everything changed the moment the execs at Paramount viewed it. Coppola had seen it all along, and now they finally got it. Pacino was outstanding. Incredibly memorable, he was. He solidified his role in the picture at that point. He was transformed by the position. Even though many thought he should have won Best Actor, his performance got him nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. He felt marginalized and chose not to attend the event as a form of protest. His career still took off regardless of the victory. With a budget of under $6 million, The Godfather became an instant hit, won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and catapulted Al Pacino to stardom. His performance of Michael was lauded for its subdued intensity, his ability to convey a great deal with a single look. One of the most famous moments in cinema, that icy glare in the restaurant scene, wasn't easy to achieve. Afterwards, Pacino said that he was scared while filming. The amount of pressure was tremendous. He found it difficult to concentrate due to the continual fear of losing his job. In fact, he hurt his ankle badly while shooting an escape scene. He had to inject himself with medication to alleviate the excruciating pain. Oddly enough, he felt comfort as soon as he felt the harm. It seems simpler than dealing with the pressure of having to prove himself, therefore he was afraid it may get him fired. Coppola intervened whenever possible since he saw that Pacino was having a hard time. In order to give himself more time to get into character, he rescheduled filming. His co-star Diane Keaton, who played Pacino's love interest, became an emotional rock for him while filming. After tense situations, they would often laugh together, which helped lighten the tension. According to Pacino, he would not have succeeded if Coppola hadn't believed in him. Frank Serpico, played by Al Pacino in 1973. Serpico was a real-life New York City police officer who exposed corruption in his department. To go into the part, Pacino studied the actual Serpico's movements and speech patterns. He was curious about the profound loneliness he felt when he defied his fellow officers. From the very beginning, the manufacturing encountered difficulties. Just before production began, Lumet took over as director from John G. Avildsen. The filming occurred in the summer of 1973, on actual streets in New York City. Set tensions were high because to the heat and Lumet's fast-paced direction. Pacino was nominated for an Oscar and won a Golden Globe for his performance. The film's approximately $30 million in box office receipts are astounding considering its modest budget of just a few $1,000,000. The crime picture Serpico came to define the genre, and Al Pacino's performance was among his most memorable. Scarface, 1983, which was released a decade later, featured Pacino in arguably his most famous portrayal to date. Tony Montana, a Cuban exile who becomes a drug lord in Miami, was portrayed by him. Brian De Palma and Oliver Stone adapted the classic from 1932 for the decade of the 1980s, adding all the luxury and brutality that the era was known for. Unforgiving, ambitious, and vicious, that is Tony Montana. He arrives in the US with the intention of taking all he wants. In creating Tony's character, Pacino immersed himself in the part. Everything about him was staged, his accent, his gestures, even his pistol handling. He grabbed the barrel of a hot pistol while filming, which caused a severe burn on his hand. His commitment to giving the character depth was demonstrated by the injuries that delayed production. Reaction to the film was negative after its debut. Its excessive vulgarity and graphic violence were among its detractors' main points. Parts of the film had to be shot in Los Angeles instead due to protests from the Cuban community in Miami about its depiction of immigration. Despite the backlash, Scarface was able to attract fans. A cult favorite, it made $66 million globally. An ode to the perils of power and greed, Tony Montana's story is both tragic and instructive. Popular culture, video games, and hip-hop were all touched by the film, and lines like "Say hello to my little friend" went down in history. Scarface was eventually considered a classic among gangster flicks. Pacino ultimately won an Oscar for Best Actor in 1992 for his portrayal of a very different type of character in Scent of a Woman. He portrayed the character of Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade, a resentful and visually impaired veteran of the Army who spends a weekend with Charlie Sims, a prep school student portrayed by Chris O'Donnell. As they go on their adventure, we see Slade battle his own demons behind Charlie's back while teaching him valuable life lessons. Pacino obstructed his eyesight with thick contact lenses in preparation for the part. Even off camera, he made his blindness seem natural by walking with a cane. One of his most iconic roles was Slade, which he played with a blend of ferocity and comedy. Slade, who is blind, leads a young woman in a flawless tango in a sequence that has become legendary from the film. There was a ruckus when Scarface came out in 1983. Some felt it glorified drug culture, had excessive violence, and used profanity often. 20 minutes into the film, viewers were stunned by the chainsaw scene. Some even left the theaters during the showing, including authors Kurt Vonnegut and John Irving. But that wasn't the end of the debate. Protests broke out in Miami as a large number of Cuban immigrants felt the film unfairly stereotyped them as drug dealers and criminals. They felt it made their neighborhood the poster child for Miami's drug trade and contributed to negative perceptions. Problems were anticipated even by those close to Hollywood. Hollywood will despise the picture because it revealed their own immorality, according to reports that Martin Scorsese informed Stephen Bauer, who portrayed Tony Montana's best buddy. Despite a budget of $31 million, it was a huge hit, earning nearly $134 million globally. The crowd went wild for Pacino's performance, and the word hoo-ah that he used to describe his character became a household name. A long-overdue Oscar finally went to an actor who had given some of cinema's all-time great performances. The film saw a resurgence in its latter years, particularly among Latino and hip-hop groups, where Tony Montana represented rebellion and ambition. It became a cult favorite. Controversy was stoked by that newfound fame. Was there a warning from Scarface about going overboard? Or had it turned into a representation of what it once denounced? The fact that people are still talking about it shows that certain films are timeless classics. After some time had passed, Pacino reprised his contentious performance in the 2018 HBO film Paterno, which dealt with the child abuse issue at Penn State. Joe Paterno, a football great with more than 400 career victories, had his reputation ruined over a pivotal two-week period in February 2011. Jerry Sandusky, who had been his assistant, was jailed for sexually assaulting minors. Sandusky received a jail term of 30 to 60 years after the fact. An eerie mystery was left hanging by the film. Do you know how much Paterno knew? Actor Al Pacino brilliantly portrayed a guy caught between the demands of his football enterprise and the mounting controversy. An assistant coach reported seeing Sandusky molest a youngster in the team shower on February 2, 2001, and Paterno remembers this incident in one scene. University authorities were notified by Paterno, but he failed to follow up. All that he had accomplished was eclipsed by that choice. Although critics lauded Pacino for revealing Paterno's inner turmoil, viewers were split by the film. Paterno was viewed by some as a scapegoat, while others thought he had done nothing. Claiming the film unjustly ruined his legacy, more than 300 of his former players opposed the release. In a few months following his dismissal from Penn State, Paterno passed away at the age of 85 from lung cancer. No side was taken by the film. Instead, it left viewers to wonder if Paterno was complicit in the system's failure or if he was simply a victim of inactivity. In February 2013, Pacino joined forces with HBO's Phil Spector for yet another contentious part. The iconic music producer, whose groundbreaking work in the 60s was also recognized for his eccentric personal life, was the subject of this biopic. Lana Clarkson, an actress, was allegedly murdered in Spector's residence in 2002. His friendship with Helen Mirren's Linda Kenny Baden, a defense attorney who cast doubt on his right to a fair trial, was the central plot point of the film. The legal struggle was not the center of Phil Spector's courtroom drama. A guy, on the other hand, seemed to be slipping out of command of his own story. Did others fail to recognize his genius? But was he really what everyone thought he was? As with the first news coverage of the case, the film failed to provide a definitive resolution, leaving viewers with the same amount of confusion. Pacino dealt with his own real-life problems away from the camera. His loss of $50 million was revealed to him in February 2011. Kenneth Starr, his long-term accountant, was involved in a Ponzi scam. Pacino, who had amassed millions of dollars from film after picture for decades, was practically bankrupt in a single day. Starr was well known for his work as a financial counselor to A-list Hollywood actors and actresses. His true crime was that he had been quietly robbing them. After the plan fell through, he was taken into custody and given a 7-year prison term. After Pacino got back from his lavish European trip, he found out that all the money had vanished. He detailed the exact moment he understood the depth of the betrayal in his autobiography, Sonny Boy. I went from having $50 million to having zero. While he was healing, Pacino took on some unanticipated projects. He subsequently confessed that he acted in Jack and Jill just for the money. He was in demand as a speaker and even made an appearance in advertisements. A wild collage of laws was what he characterized that period, but ultimately, he learned to be resilient because of it. Everyone is vulnerable, even those at the very top of Hollywood. Actor Al Pacino has always been more than that. Narrator and storyteller he is. A person who finds fulfillment in the duties he does and the endeavors he undertakes. Beyond the stage, his love for acting is unbridled. He aspires to master the skill, dissect it, and impart his knowledge to others. He got behind the camera because of that motivation. In 1996, he directed Searching for Richard, his debut feature film. It was not your average movie. It served as a performance, a documentary, and an autobiography all rolled into one. Pacino aimed to demonstrate the relevance of Shakespeare. He decided to demonstrate the enduring relevance of the ideas explored in Richard III, a drama about ambition and power. Various styles are employed throughout the film. Actors such as Alec Baldwin, Winona Ryder, and Kevin Spacey appear in staged scenes from Richard III. Actors Vanessa Redgrave and Kenneth Branagh are among the professors and celebrities interviewed. Many people enjoyed the movie. When it was released in 1997, it was named the best documentary of all time by the Directors Guild of America. The critics thought it did a great job of making Shakespeare interesting and approachable. It was a fantastic journey and a lot of fun. According to Peter Travers, he became the helm of Chinese coffee in February, 4 years after that. This project was unlike any other. It has nothing to do with literature or history. Two guys were seated in a room and conversing. Pacino had previously performed the play in 1992, and the film was based on it. Ira Lewis wrote the original play. The plot centers on two characters, Jerry Orbach's photographer Jake Mannheim and Pacino's struggling writer Harry Levine. The story unfolds over the course of one night in 1982 Greenwich Village as two friends engage in a deep and passionate discussion. It had its world premiere in February at the Telluride Film Festival and went on to play at Tribeca. Those who watched it valued its candor, but it didn't attract many viewers. Pacino, an actor's vision was a DVD box set that included the film in February 2007, allowing a wider audience to enjoy this underappreciated masterpiece. For a long time, Pacino did more than just direct, he also helped shape the acting careers of aspiring actors. Along with Ellen Burstyn and Harvey Keitel, he has been serving as co-president of the Actors Studio since February. This acting school is unlike any other. Some of the most legendary actors of all time got their starts there. There, Pacino learned from the likes of Charlie Laughton and Lee Strasberg. According to him, the studio was a life-altering experience. Then he assists it in doing the same for other people. Pacino views the Actors Studio as an environment that encourages risk-taking. Forget about stardom and financial prosperity. To study without fear is to push oneself to one's limits. Paul Newman, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, and Jack Nicholson were among the many famous Hollywood actors that graduated from this institution. In his ongoing work with workshops and talks, Pacino remains a mentor to aspiring actors. He teaches more than simply technique. He hopes that they will read widely, reflect deeply, and investigate literature and philosophy. Acting, in his view, is about more than just giving a good performance. This is all about getting a handle on life. Despite spending his whole life in the limelight, Al Pacino has never tied the knot. Despite having romances with Beverly D'Angelo, Diane Keaton, and Kathleen Quinlan, he was single throughout his life. We learned why in his memoir Sonny Boy, published in February of 2024. Marriage was never something he thought would improve his life, but he went so far as to say that was the doorway to the agony train. His worries impacted his perspective on commitment, and no romantic partnership could ever alter that. His romance with Diane Keaton is legendary in Hollywood. In 1972, they crossed paths on the set of The Godfather. Both endearing and enigmatic, he captivated her. They dated intermittently for a long time. By 1990, though, Keaton had had enough. She issued an ultimatum to him when they were filming Part 3 of The Godfather. Give it your all or else. She turned and walked away as Pacino declined. Before that, there was a significant relationship with Kathleen Quinlan. Lee Strasberg, an acting instructor, gave a party in 1979 when they first met. For a long time, they were inseparable. They even crossed Europe at the same time. Pacino came quite close to marrying Quinlan, but ultimately decided against it. He confessed this later in life. It was a choice that crushed his heart and kept it broken for a long time. Being a parent was a significant aspect of his life, even if he never got married. With his 29-year-old partner Nur Al-Fala, he had a son called Roman in June 2023, when he was 83 years old. After rumors spread that Pacino had asked for a paternity test, many were startled to hear the news. He just couldn't accept the idea that he might still be a parent. He re-embraced parenthood once the findings proved Roman was his. While Pacino and Al-Fala started dating in 2020, it wasn't until April 2022 that their relationship became public knowledge. This was all amid the epidemic. Even though Alfala was famous for dating older guys, the attention they attracted was due to their 54-year age difference. Clint Eastwood and Mick Jagger were rumored to be her ex-boyfriends. Although Pacino has 3 children of her own, Roman is her firstborn. Olivia Rose and Anton James, twins, were born in 2002 to Beverly D'Angelo. Julie Marie, his elder daughter, was born in 1989 to acting teacher Jen Tarrant. Rejoicing in fatherhood at the age of 83 transformed his life. He was determined to break the pattern of parental abandonment that had befallen him as a child. He was still involved after breaking up with Alfala. They play harmonicas together and he communicates with Roman through video chats. Pacino is still on the job at the age of 84. His next endeavors demonstrate that he has no intention of slowing down, as seen by his 2021 role in House of Gucci. Johnny Depp's next film Modi, which is based on the life of Italian artist Amedeo Modigliani, is much awaited. As Modigliani battles his art and his own demons, the film chronicles 3 tumultuous days in his life. In addition, Pacino stars in the upcoming horror flick The Ritual, which is based on the real-life exorcisms performed by Emma Schmidt. Coming out on April 18, 2025, the film follows 2 priests as they face their own demons and execute perilous exorcisms. Not only that, but he's also killing Castro and Billy Knight, demonstrating that his love of storytelling is unwavering. To Pacino, acting is more than a profession. It was the one thing that helped him persevere throughout his darkest hours. According to him, it was a lifesaver. There have been several challenges in his life. A near-death incident in 2020 altered his perspective irrevocably. His pulse stopped beating while he was sick, and paramedics had to come and get him. He then started to believe there was no life beyond death. His belief was one that he freely expressed. Pacino is still very much involved in his community, a doting father, and a man who finds meaning in the lessons he has learned throughout his life. He lived a rich life despite never following the conventional path. He is still one of the most interesting people in Hollywood, whether he's acting or not.